Have you ever trusted the food on your plate, thinking it was safe, only to find out later it was slowly damaging your health? What if the meals you believed were harmless were actually blocking your blood flow day after day without you even noticing? And what if I told you the real danger isn't fast food or sweets, but the ordinary foods most seniors eat every single day? There's a man I know, his name is Walter. He's 75 years old, lives in Ohio, and just yesterday, he underwent brain surgery. Walter isn't some unusual case. He's a retired man who enjoys playing cards with friends on Thursdays and has never smoked a cigarette in his life. From the outside, you'd think he was doing everything right. But something eventually caught up to him, and it wasn't just age. What brought him to that hospital bed wasn't an accident, and it wasn't some rare medical condition. It was the food he ate day after day. Not the obvious culprits, like greasy fast food or piles of desserts. Instead, it was the kind of everyday, familiar food many of us keep in our kitchens, the kind we trust without ever questioning. And that's where the danger hides. When I visited him last week, Walter told me something that stayed in my mind. He said, "I thought I was doing everything right, but what clogged my arteries wasn't one big mistake. It was 5 small habits I never questioned." In this video, I'll share Walter's story and reveal the 5 everyday foods he wishes he had stopped eating years ago, foods that may be slowly harming your health too. You'll see how these foods affected Walter's arteries, his brain, and his overall health. And as you listen, you might realize just how common these risks are for older adults who think they're eating a perfectly normal diet. Stay with me until the end, because these lessons could help you avoid surgery, protect your daily energy, and hold on to your independence. Sometimes the most life-changing discoveries come from the smallest everyday choices we hardly notice. So let's begin. Number 1, processed meats. Walter admitted that he used to have ham or bacon almost every morning with his breakfast. On other days, it might be deli turkey in a sandwich or a couple of slices of sausage with dinner. It all seemed ordinary to him, nothing extreme, just the kind of food many older men keep around for something quick, simple, and familiar. But over the years, those seemingly small servings built up into something dangerous. When the doctors examined him, they found heavy plaque clogging his arteries, and they weren't surprised once they heard what he had been eating. Processed meats are loaded with saturated fats and chemical preservatives like sodium nitrate. These compounds slowly damage the delicate lining of your blood vessels, creating the perfect environment for cholesterol and calcium to cling, harden, and form plaque. That is exactly how blockages develop. In Walter's case, the process was silent at first. He only noticed a bit of fatigue when climbing the stairs, then occasional lightheadedness. But by then, the real harm was already building beneath the surface. That's the frightening part about foods like these. They don't strike in one dramatic moment. They wear you down little by little, year after year. And here's the worst part. These meats are often marketed as convenient, high in protein, and perfect for busy people. Walter believed that message. But what seemed like convenience came with a hidden cost. The salt content alone can push blood pressure higher, putting added strain on the arteries. Over time, that constant pressure weakens their walls, leaving them more vulnerable to ruptures or dangerous blockages. And let's not forget about inflammation. That constant drip of chemicals from processed meats, especially nitrates, acts like fuel for chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation isn't just a passing issue. It's one of the biggest hidden drivers behind heart disease and stroke, particularly in older adults. Walter told me that if he had the chance to turn back time, he would never have treated those meats so casually. "If I had known," he said, "I would have thought twice before making bacon part of my routine." And he's absolutely right. The little choices we make each morning don't seem like much, but they shape our health years down the road. So if you find yourself eating these kinds of meats regularly, it may be time to pause and think again. You don't need to give them up completely in one night, but even cutting back a little can give your arteries the breathing room they desperately need. And believe me, your brain and your future self will thank you later. Number 2, baked goods and packaged pastries. Walter admitted he had always had a sweet tooth. It wasn't anything extreme. Maybe a muffin in the morning, a store-bought cookie in the evening, or occasionally a slice of banana bread his neighbor baked. Sometimes it was one of those boxed snack cakes that look so tempting near the checkout aisle. Nothing over the top, just small comforts he leaned on, especially after his wife passed away a few years ago. Those little treats gave him a sense of routine and comfort. But what Walter didn't realize was that many of these baked goods are loaded with refined sugars, and worse, with trans fats. These dangerous fats often don't appear clearly on the label. Instead, they hide behind innocent-sounding words like hakikai, partially hydrogenated oils. And while trans fats make pastries flaky and help them sit on store shelves longer, they come with a serious cost to your body. They raise LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, while lowering HDL, the good cholesterol that your heart depends on. That's a dangerous double blow. Over time, this imbalance sets the stage for plaque to build up, narrowing your arteries and choking off the blood flow your brain and heart need to stay healthy. That's exactly what happened to Walter. There was no sharp pain, no dramatic warning sign he could point to. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But quietly, inside his body, inflammation was building, and his arteries were slowly becoming stiffer and less flexible. And it wasn't only the fats causing the problem. The refined sugars in those pastries would send his blood sugar soaring, only to drop it just as fast. That roller coaster rise and crash didn't just leave him tired. It actively damaged the delicate lining of his blood vessels and pushed his body toward insulin resistance. For older adults, this is an even bigger issue. With age, the body naturally becomes less efficient at processing sugar. Walter admitted that he used to think, "It's just a small pastry, how much harm could it do?" But when you have those treats every day, or even several times a week, the damage slowly stacks up. And it's not about feeling guilty. It's about being aware. These foods don't just touch your waistline. They reach far deeper, affecting your circulation, your memory, your daily energy, and ultimately your entire quality of life. And here's something many people overlook. A lot of these pastries are cleverly labeled as low-fat or made with whole grains. But behind those labels, they still contain additives, stabilizers, and artificial sweeteners. These ingredients can confuse your metabolism and continue fueling inflammation, even when you think you're making a healthier choice. Walter didn't know any of this at the time. Most people don't. But now he does. And he's been making changes, quietly, step by step. Instead of grabbing a packaged muffin, he reaches for fresh fruit. Instead of a cookie, he'll have a small handful of walnuts, or sometimes plain Greek yogurt when he wants something sweet. He told me it took him a couple of weeks to adjust, but surprisingly, he no longer craves the old stuff the way he once did. More importantly, he feels lighter. His mind is clearer, his blood pressure has started to settle, and those strange dizzy spells in the morning have faded away. If you're still here watching this video and finding these insights valuable, let me know by commenting number 2 below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you'll never miss an update. Your support truly helps us continue creating meaningful content to inform, guide, and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Number 3. Flavored coffee creamers. Walter never skipped his morning coffee. He often called it his start button, the ritual that set his day in motion. But what he never really thought about was the splash of flavored creamer he added to every single cup. French vanilla on Monday, hazelnut on Tuesday. Just a touch of sweetness, a bit of creaminess to make it feel complete. It seemed completely harmless, and because it was such a small act, repeated every morning, it quickly became a habit so automatic that Walter barely even noticed it anymore. But here's the problem. Those flavored creamers, especially the non-dairy versions, are filled with artificial ingredients, hydrogenated oils, corn syrup solids, and chemical stabilizers. They're engineered to taste rich and smooth, and to sit on a store shelf for months without spoiling. The truth is, the body doesn't recognize or process these ingredients the way it does real food. In fact, Some of those hydrogenated oils behave just like trans fats once they're inside your system, even if the label boldly says 0 grams. Why? Because companies are allowed to round down small amounts, but when you add that small amount to your coffee every single day, it adds up much faster than you think. Walter admitted that he never measured. He simply poured until his coffee looked right, not realizing that each cup was quietly delivering harmful compounds into his bloodstream. With every sip, he was raising his LDL, the bad cholesterol, while lowering his HDL, the good kind that protects your heart. At the same time, those ingredients fueled chronic inflammation in his blood vessels. The coffee itself wasn't the enemy, it was the creamer. And that steady inflammation became one of the major risk factors linked it to heart disease and stroke. Over time, this inflammation weakens the walls of your arteries and makes the inner lining far more vulnerable to damage. Once that lining is compromised, plaque has an easier surface to stick to. That's how narrowing begins. That's how blood pressure silently builds. And in Walter's case, it eventually led to the kind of medical emergency no one ever expects when they're just pouring something into their morning coffee. What makes this even more concerning is how common it is. Many older adults use flavored creamers every day, believing they're making a better choice by avoiding heavy cream or spoonfuls of sugar. But the reality is, these products can be even more harmful, and the danger often hides in plain sight. But in trying to avoid sugar or heavy cream, many people end up trading one problem for another. The artificial sweeteners and oils inside those flavored creamers may keep the calorie count low, but they confuse your metabolism in ways you might not expect. Over time, they can trigger sudden spikes in insulin, especially when consumed day after day. For seniors, those spikes are harder to control and far more damaging to the body in the long run. Walter admitted he didn't believe any of this at first. "It's just coffee creamer," he would say. "How bad could it be?" But when he finally made the switch, choosing a simple splash of real milk and paying closer attention to ingredient labels, he noticed something remarkable. His blood pressure began to improve. The strange tightness he sometimes felt in his chest gradually faded. And for the first time in years, his energy didn't crash before noon. This isn't about cutting everything out all at once. It's about making choices that your body actually recognizes as food. Think about it. If you wouldn't spread corn syrup solids or chemical thickeners on your toast, why stir them into your coffee every morning? Walter's experience shows us that the habits that seem the smallest often carry the greatest weight over time. That tiny splash of flavor, repeated every single day for years, can quietly shape your health more than you realize. And it's not just about lowering your risk of heart disease or stroke. It's about the everyday quality of life, staying sharp, steady, and strong. It's about being able to stand up from a chair without losing balance, to walk without constant fatigue, and to think clearly well into the afternoon. As we age, these little choices add up. What we stir into our coffee each morning becomes part of a much bigger picture. So if flavored creamers are part of your daily routine, it may be time to take a closer look. A small adjustment could be the update your start button truly needs, and your arteries may end up thanking you for it. Number 4. Packaged soups and instant noodles. Walter used to say that soup was his ultimate comfort food. On days when he didn't feel like cooking, or whenever the weather turned cold, he would grab a can of chicken noodle soup or pour boiling water over a cup of instant ramen. It was quick, easy, and familiar. That's exactly what made it so appealing. In his mind, it seemed like a better option than greasy takeout or skipping dinner altogether. But what Walter didn't realize, and what many older adults don't see coming, is just how much sodium hides in those convenient meals. Some cans of soup or noodle cups contain more than half the recommended daily salt intake in just a single serving. And let's be honest, how many of us actually stop at one serving? Most people don't. Over time, all that salt quietly adds up, meal after meal. The effect is powerful. High sodium steadily raises blood pressure, tightening blood vessels and forcing the heart to work harder year after year. And for arteries that are already aging, already less flexible than they once were, that extra pressure speeds up the damage. That's exactly what happened to Walter. His arteries weren't only clogged, they had become stiff, overworked, and fragile from the constant strain. He remembered feeling a dull pressure in his head by late afternoon. He brushed it off, assuming it was just another part of getting older. But the scans revealed something different. His high-sodium diet had pushed his blood pressure into a dangerous zone. The walls of his arteries had begun to thin in some places, while thickening in others, as his body struggled to cope. That's what eventually led to his medical crisis. And the painful part is that it could have been prevented. And sodium isn't the only hidden issue in these foods. Many packaged soups and instant noodles are loaded with additives, artificial flavors, and chemical preservatives. They're designed to taste like real ingredients while keeping costs low and shelf life long. But inside the body, those chemicals can confuse your nervous system and interfere with kidney function. This becomes even riskier for older adults, whose kidneys are already less efficient with age. That constant stress eventually trickles back into your circulatory system, putting even more strain on your arteries. Walter admitted that he had never once thought about checking the sodium content. "I only looked at calories," he told me. "I didn't realize my heart didn't care about calories nearly as much as it cared about salt." That realization hit him hard. He genuinely thought he had been making better choices. He believed soup was safe, something comforting and harmless. But now he's made a change. These days, when he wants something warm and easy, he starts with a low-sodium broth, then adds frozen or fresh vegetables, and sprinkles in herbs for flavor. It takes only a few extra minutes compared to opening a can, but the difference in how he feels is dramatic. The dull afternoon pressure in his head is gone. The strange tingling in his arms has disappeared. And most importantly, he hasn't faced another emergency hospital visit. If you've got instant noodles tucked away in your cupboard, or if you reach for canned soup whenever you don't feel like cooking, it might be time to pause and take a closer look at the label. Don't just glance at the calories. Look carefully at the sodium content, not only per serving, but for the entire package. You may be shocked at what you find, and once you notice it, it's hard to ignore. This isn't about giving up comfort food altogether. It's about choosing versions that truly bring comfort to your body as well as your taste buds. Walter didn't give up on soup. He simply gave up the kind that was quietly breaking him down from the inside out. And that small decision has made all the difference. Changes like this don't feel dramatic in the moment, but over time, their impact grows. Your arteries don't need more pressure. What they need is space to move, to carry oxygen to your brain, to help you stay steady on your feet, sharp in your mind, and strong in your body. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights helpful, let me know by commenting number 4 below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming videos. Your support truly helps us continue creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Number 5. Sugary breakfast cereals. Walter never skipped breakfast. He always believed in starting the day with something quick, easy, and just a little sweet. For him, that usually meant pouring a bowl of cereal and adding a splash of milk before sitting down at the table. Sometimes the box he chose was labeled whole grain. Other times it had bright pictures of fruit or bold claims like heart healthy written across the front. To Walter, these labels made him feel like he was making a smart choice, something better than pastries or fried foods. But the truth was surprising. Most of those cereals were packed with added sugar, far more than he ever realized. Even the ones that didn't taste overly sweet often contained 5, 10, sometimes even 15 grams of sugar in a single serving. And let's be honest, who really eats just one serving? Walter didn't, and most people don't. That morning sugar rush may feel like it gives you energy to start the day, but it comes with a price. The sudden spike causes blood sugar to shoot up fast, only to crash soon after. And it's not just about feeling tired. That sharp rise and fall actually damages the inner lining of your blood vessels. The brain, with its delicate circulation, is especially vulnerable to this kind of stress. Over the years, those daily sugar hits create chronic inflammation, making arteries more fragile, narrower, and more prone to blockages. Walter had no idea cereal could be part of the problem. "It's breakfast," he said. "How bad can it be?" But it wasn't only the sugar. The refined grains found in many cereals break down so quickly that they flood the bloodstream with glucose, putting heavy stress on the pancreas and making the body's insulin response work overtime. For older adults, that constant metabolic strain becomes harder and harder to manage, and when the body can no longer keep up, inflammation begins to take hold. Arteries stiffen, plaque gradually builds, and the risk of small clots forming rises significantly. The doctors explained to Walter that the damage wasn't limited to his heart or his legs. It had already reached the arteries in his brain, the very ones that are most critical for memory, balance, and focus. He had started noticing small but troubling changes, forgetting names that used to come easily, losing his train of thought right in the middle of a sentence, standing up too quickly and feeling lightheaded. At first, he brushed it off, thinking it was nothing more than the natural process of getting older. But in reality, these were signs of something more dangerous, a slow starvation of oxygen and nutrients to the brain, caused by arteries that were simply too clogged to do their job. Walter looked at me and said, "No one tells you cereal could do this." But once he examined it more closely, the truth became clear. Those ingredients weren't there to truly nourish him. They were designed to sell a comforting image of health, bright boxes, cheerful slogans, and heart-shaped logos, not to deliver genuine wellness. That realization changed everything for him. Now, Walter begins his mornings in a completely different way. Sometimes it's a bowl of warm oatmeal topped with cinnamon and a handful of nuts. Other days, he makes scrambled eggs with spinach or enjoys plain yogurt with fresh berries. Nothing complicated, nothing fancy, just real food that his body recognizes and benefits from. And the difference has been night and day. His energy lasts, his mood feels steady, and his focus is sharper than it has been in years. That mid-morning crash is gone. The brain fog has lifted, no more trembling hands when lunch is delayed. And best of all, he finally feels like himself again, as if his brain is waking up with him in the morning instead of lagging behind for hours. If breakfast is part of your daily rhythm, take a moment to look closely at what's really in your bowl. What may seem small and innocent could actually be doing more harm than you realize. Walter didn't need a complete diet overhaul or some extreme plan. All he needed was to stop feeding inflammation first thing in the morning. That one quiet change gave his arteries some relief, and it gave his brain something even more important: a second chance. Walter's story isn't rare, but it is a wake-up call. Here was a man who never smoked, rarely drank, and honestly believed he was making the right choices. Yet he still ended up needing brain surgery, not because he lived recklessly, but because the foods he trusted most slowly wore his body down over the years. It wasn't about overeating. It was about not knowing the hidden dangers of everyday foods that seemed so normal. So let me ask you, what stood out to you most in this video? Was it the flavored coffee creamer you might be pouring without thinking each morning? Was it the soup you reach for when you want comfort, but don't notice the dangerous amount of salt? Or maybe it was the cereal you've always believed was a healthy way to start your day. These aren't just small food choices. They are long-term habits, and they shape how we age, how we think, and how we feel each day. If you recognized yourself in any part of Walter's routine, don't feel ashamed. Instead, feel informed. Take this knowledge as a reason to pause, reflect, and make one small change starting today. Because when it comes to your arteries, your brain, and your future, even a quiet shift can make all the difference. And if it feels overwhelming, remember this: you don't have to fix everything at once. Walter didn't. He simply started with one small step, and that's what gave him a new chance at life. He began with breakfast, making small but intentional choices. Then he changed the way he shopped for soup, replacing the high-sodium cans with something healthier. Over time, those little adjustments added up to something much bigger. His energy slowly returned. His blood pressure eased down to safer levels, and the heavy fog that once clouded his mind began to lift. Now, Walter doesn't focus on being perfect. Instead, he focuses on being aware. That awareness has given him something more powerful than any quick fix ever could: the ability to take back control over how he ages, and the peace of mind that comes with knowing he's no longer working against his own body without realizing it. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We'd truly love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing that stood out to you and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts and experiences matter, and they may inspire someone else who's watching this right now. Reading your comments gives us the motivation and encouragement to keep creating meaningful content. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could benefit. Your support allows us to continue producing valuable content to inform and inspire. Wishing you good health, lasting happiness, and peace of mind. And remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next video.